Hello and welcome to the Eat, Sleep, Arsenal Repeat podcast on the Gooner Talk. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you happen to be in the world. Thank you so much for making this a part of your weekly routine and hopefully improving your weekly routine as well by listening to it. As always, thank you so much. Do drop a like, do subscribe, and do welcome my regular guest to the show. First of all, it's the Doc. How you doing, Raj? You good? You well?
Yeah, doing well. 8 points up, so doing great.
You never sound convincing when I ask you. But yeah,
Hey,
I'm all right. I'm
it's
fine.
day to day, man. It's day to day. The same way Arsenal take life, I take life the same way. Every
Yes,
day, every
training
day.
by training, as Arteta's now calling it, which I found rather amusing in his press conference. Indeed. We're also joined by the host of the Highbury Squad. It's Sophie. How you doing, Sophie? You good? You well?
At ease, everyone. At ease. I'm here. It's all good. 8 points clear, like the doc says, ready to rock and roll. And I have my very own health tip for the end of the show.
Oh, and now you're
Very
putting pressure on
exciting.
Owen to come up with something. He's now racking his brains. What should I do? Speaking of which, Owen, how are you? You good? You well?
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. Yeah, there's nothing better to get over the stress of Christmas than Newcastle, Spurs, and United all within quick succession. My heart
Mm.
isn't really fit for this at the minute, so I'm stumbling through. But everything's working out quite swell at the minute.
Indeed, absolutely. So you're both actually going to be over in the UK very soon. Indeed. Owen, when are you over? When are you coming?
I'll arrive Sunday morning, so I'll be into London at say maybe 9:30 in the morning, and then it's a quick hit. I'm back out on the Monday evening.
Lovely stuff. Soph?
I arrive on Friday morning, direct from La La Land. So can't wait. Really looking forward to it.
I should clarify for the doc. This wasn't like an organised thing, and we're not leaving you out. It's just a bit of a spontaneous thing that happened to be at the same time. But if you want to just hop on a flight to the UK, feel free. You're more than welcome.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
No, it's going to be great. I look forward to seeing both of you as I have planned. I desperately tried to get to the Manchester United game. I did everything I could. I sent emails. I tried to bribe the club to let me in, but still there is no space in these home Premier League games beyond Kaya. I was tempted to try and just kidnap Kaya and say, oh, he can't go to this one. But no, it didn't work. So I hopefully will be at the next one, which will be the Man City away game in the FA Cup, which of course we'll discuss in next week's podcast. But we can't really go any much further into this podcast without, of course, talking about the North London derby and the weekend, of course, before the North London derby. I will talk about the health aspect shortly, but just to get reactions to the derby, Raj, what an amazing performance, an amazing win, and of course, sending us 8 points clear at the top of the table. What are your thoughts?
It was one of the easiest away NLDs that I've seen in a long, long time. I think part of that is just Conte's, for whatever reason, Conte's Tottenham, they don't have that intensity from the start. And we've seen it all season, right? They have to go down like 2-0 before they actually start to actually challenge and play with intensity. And that plays right into our style of play, which is going to be all over you from the start with that high press, that trigger press, and then Lloris, some of his mistakes play right into that as well. So they're just that it's almost like our style of play right now is completely takes advantage of the way that they play. And it was comfortable. It was comfortable football. I think the only threat that they really had was off our mistakes, a couple misplaced passes from Partey, but he made up for it in other ways. I mean, almost had potentially one of the best goals in a North London derby of all time off the shin, which was incredible, just the power off the shin. But yeah, no, it was, great performance. I thought we handled their response well in the second half as well. And we know we kind of just played it out. Of course, the stuff at the end of the game, I think Richarlison isn't getting enough for what he did at the end of the game. He was being a bit of a prick the whole time since he came on.
Yeah,
so, he really was for no reason. And so, I mean, you don't step into that, especially when he's bantering with the crowd the entire time. Like, that's not on you to get in the way of that. It just escalates things further. But anyways, honest, easy game. And in a North London derby, that's I think that's the best compliment you can give because you never know what's going to happen in these rivalry games.
Absolutely. Sophie, it was a performance that, to be honest, I don't know, it's fair to say that I wasn't expecting. I hate the build-up to this game more than any game in the away North London derby. The nerves, the doubts that kind of creep into your mind because of how bad the record is. But it was like almost as if the game started, all of that doubt, all of that frustration and angst evaporated. Even before we scored the first goal, I was like, no, we look good. And it feels a matter of time until we not only score, but win. It was, as Raj said, probably the easiest NLD we've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm still nervous at 90 minutes with 5 minutes of added time. I don't know what it is. It's probably because it's the rivalry and anything can happen. But yeah, it was very comfortable. I actually think that first 45 minutes was probably, I don't know if I'm exaggerating. For me, I felt it was like our most complete game of football, barring some errant passes from the midfield, like the doc said. I just thought that once the game started, we were in total control of that game. Even our home game against them was really good, but in the second half, we let them get in. Liverpool, we commanded that first half. Second half, kind of got a little bit too close for comfort. But this was just dominant, and not to exaggerate, but I felt like it had that Barcelona pass the ball, take the ball, feel about it, and Pep's type of vibe. And it was just masterful, I thought. And they had fear in their eyes. Like literally, I think they shat the bed before the game even started. And they were it just felt like they came in thinking that we were going to lose. And Super Kev's talked on our show about intimidating teams. And it's been years since we've done that. From the tunnel to kind of the pitch, the way we play, we totally intimidated them. We suffocated them. I think Richarlison is a punk. And if he doesn't get punished, I think Arsenal fans should protest and do everything they possibly can to just really make sure that this doesn't go unpunished. What Bush League behavior from him? My partner doesn't really watch Tottenham games. She only watches the North London derby. And she's like, who is the prick? I've used that word because the doc did, with the bleach blonde, with the bleached hair. And I go, oh, welcome to, meeting Richarlison. He does really good things off the pitch. Like people in Brazil really love him. He's really quite a community guy, but on the pitch, he's like Jekyll and Hyde. So the fact that we won and we rolled them up, the Tomiyasu spat on the sideline, the non-fist pumping Martinelli when in the corner. I mean, how juvenile. And I love that we got to them in that way. So it was just glorious for so many reasons. And that for me was just beautiful. I don't even want to talk about the fan that kicked Ramsdale. What an absolute plonker. He should be banned from football. And if that was on the street, he would have been arrested immediately.
Well, as of the time of recording, the 35-year-old man, believe it or not, that he has indeed been arrested, we believe, with on suspicion of assault and entering the field of play. And I think there's a third charge actually as well. But there's information you can find about that all over social media if you want to get the details about that. But
real quick, Tom, the worst thing that he did that no one's really talking about, I don't know if they are in England and stuff, but the fact that he turned away and ran away like a child, like who had just stolen the cookies when their parents told them not to, that is just that to me was just it was disgusting.
I think the third charge is being a Spurs fan, by the way.
Oh, yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Yeah, there's 59,000 charges going on in that stadium that evening. Goodness me. Owen, just kind of last word on reactions to the derby and obviously what this means. The game I compared this to was Bournemouth away earlier in the season, where we just really didn't allow the opposition anything. Yeah, they had kind of a few spells in the second half, and Spurs do tend to be a second half side, but we just suffocated them. We knew exactly what we were doing. And if you kind of compare that to last season, there was a number of changes to the starting 11, Ben White, Saliba, Zinchenko and Partey all there. Is that the difference between Arsenal then and now, or is it just beyond those four players?
Yeah, well, going back to last year's North London derby, obviously it ended with a horrific outcome, and the consequences of that loss were absolutely huge. But I think when you look back to that, not to focus too much on that one, but when you look back at it, I think when the media are looking back at that and referring to it in regards to the build up to this match, something that a lot of people overlook was, yes, definitely the absentees in the side. And not only that, the officiating on the night, I think, was absolutely diabolical. I think it was Rob Holding that got sent off pretty early in that game.
Yeah.
There was some questionable decisions as well. But listen, going into this game, I think as well, everybody always says, I think form goes out the window, and this was far from that case. Spurs just looked like an absolutely depleted side. The whole second half AFC thing is always being thrown about as a bit of a banter piece. But Arsenal are renowned this season for coming out the gates pretty quick and trying to get that job done very, very fast. The first half, in my opinion, was just exemplary of exactly that. That is Arteta ball. And the frightening thing is that this is our difficult period, and this is without one of our most pivotal players in Gabriel Jesus. And I mean, I'm very quick to throw criticisms at Eddie Nketiah, but by God, is he stepping up to the mark at the minute? And the effort that kid has put into improving the deficiencies in his game that were letting him down are just monumental. It had everything that a derby had. In the second half, yes, Spurs come on a bit quicker, but look, there's going to be a natural dip in output from the side that are 2-0 up. The players really want to be throwing themselves into crazy tackles and stuff like that when they're in a secure position and big games coming up. I don't think so. The spot with Granit Xhaka and Antonio Conte on the sideline, Mikel Arteta chasing after Granit Xhaka, the memes that come out of this game were absolutely endless. It's a little sour that it ended the way it ended, with, as everybody has touched on, Richarlison, who I think, you see some of the footage, and there was a close fist contact to the face, Darren Ramsdale, who, let's be honest, let's give Aaron Ramsdale some applause, because there's a lot of players that either would have reacted by retaliating with some level of physicality, or there's other players like Højbjerg who would have went to ground trying to seek some, extra punishment.
That was embarrassing for the penalty call, yeah.
Wild, but look, nothing, and I think everybody here can admit that straight away when I seen the first player, I can't remember who it was, running towards the away fans, I said to my missus when we were sitting watching the game, this is just like when we won the league at White Hart Lane. It brought you back to that moment, and it just shows you how far we've come from that loss to Spurs there last season.
I think it is a combination of, the differences in players, but, the amount of improvement that can be shown in such a short space of time as a collective. Also, the fact that the referee dictated that game, significant. The penalty call on Cedric, which was a joke, that gave them that lead and that foothold and that confidence to then continue. And, we had Rob Holding and Cedric on the right-hand side, and against Heung-min Son. I have been critical, I think, fairly of Arteta at times, and I think not playing Tomiyasu on the right to deal with Son during that game last season was probably one of the errors of last season, potentially, as much as playing Xhaka at left back against Brighton was also an error. This season, we've seen such composure and, I think strength in his decision-making and his selections. Tomiyasu playing at left back against Liverpool is a great example of that. And, of course, choosing to play Zinchenko so often now, who is just such a transformative figure in that back line. He's crucial.
I remember, Tom, I said when we were linked with Lisandro Martinez at the time, and I think it was on your show, I said that I would rather have Alexander Zinchenko for 60-odd million than Lisandro Martinez for 30.
Yeah. Me and Sofa were early bangers of the Zinchenko drum. We were.
Big time.
Yeah. There's that show, I think it's on Harry. Is it Harry or your channel where we're discussing kind of the players that we want to sign?
It might be on our channel. We did a top 5, I think, of players, and Zinchenko was right up there for you and me. By the way, I changed my tube sign to Mind the Gap for Tottenham fans because I was on a Tottenham show. So I changed the Arsenal to Mind the Gap for them.
Brilliant.
14 points, is it? I lost count. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we've all lost count. Go on, Raj.
Oh, I thought Conte was quite naive too with that 2-man midfield, especially when he knows Zinchenko was playing and he's going to drop into that inverted position. I mean, their midfield we were bypassing it like that. So I know he loves that formation and he wanted to put, that's what he likes to do, but it was tactically naive. It was never going to work the way that he had it set up to start.
Am I right in saying that was Sarr's first start for Spurs? I think it might have been his first in the Premier League. It might have been his first Premier League.
In the Premier League, I think so, because I think he started one of the cup games. But on the Spurs shows that I was on, the one complaint they all have, guys, is okay, he's a winning manager and he's got a great resume, but why can't he adapt? He's not adaptable and he's not changing anything. And their biggest fear was and I spoke to Lee Dixon too, and he said the same thing. If Saka and Martinelli, the way they play, their wing backs are on toast, you know. And Bentancur, I know, probably would have maybe changed the dynamic in that midfield the same way. He's become so important to them. But Tottenham fans, they were very like, if he doesn't change it up, if he doesn't try and be adaptable, we're toast. But say every person I've spoken to on our show, when I say, what is your biggest fear about facing Arsenal? The answer is the same. Saka and Martinelli.
Because the width kills them. Absolutely. And they have, and I'm so happy, and they have wasted Heung-min Son and Harry Kane. Absolutely wasted. They brought in Kulusevski, a player I really rate. I'm gutted he's playing for them. They brought a player like that in too late to complement those. They've not added any creativity to the midfield to free those players in the front. Like, we've got Martin Odegaard in that midfield, and it's the absence of that kind of player for them. Like, you look through their transfer business they've done in the years that Pochettino was there. In 2014, Ben Davies and Federico Fazio, of course, Dele Alli came in and Mourinho just absolutely ruined him kind of absolutely brilliantly. Toby Alderweireld and Heung-min Son came in 2015. Moussa Sissoko was bought for like more than 30 million. Vincent Janssen came in for 22 million. These are euros, by the way. Victor Wanyama. They just never brought in that creative spark ever. Davison Sanchez, 42 million euros.
They
Lucas
whiffed on
Moura.
getting Eriksen back.
Yeah, absolutely.
What he's doing now at United.
But isn't it funny that I think, look, first of all, I think Paul Merson, comes out with a lot of things that you could overlook, but he was pretty spot on when he mentioned the fact that any side, not a big six side, that is playing with a 5 at the back with 2 holding midfielders, should not be conceding goal with the frequency that Tottenham Hotspur are. And let's face it, the hypocrisy from the media, mainstream media, Tom will say that, not to insult yourself and your colleagues, but firing shots over here. But the hypocrisy
and soap as well.
I'm so sorry. I suppose you right too, Raj. I'm sorry to you too. But the hypocrisy, because 6 months ago, I remember sitting here and they were thinking, Antonio Conte, brilliant. He's going to bring Spurs a trophy. They have won the transfer window with Jed Spence and, who have Perisic and these players. And suddenly now you listen to Talk Sport, listen to Sky Sports, listen to any of them. And the thing that they're saying is this is neglect from the ownership and Daniel Levy. It's very, very funny that they were praising them for winning a transfer window at the start of the season. And now the biggest excuse is the incomings and the ownership of the club. It's hilarious. And I'm here for it, front row.
Can I just add real quick? I don't think I've had a more satisfying moment in doing like a Sky Sports news segment than I did on Monday morning when they asked about Mudryk. And I know we'll get to that, but because you're talking about them winning the transfer window, to defend our club and mention the Gary Neville, what is Arsenal's transfer policy, versus, well, what is Tottenham's, what is Chelsea? I just took the moment, and when you just get the fastball, but you can hit it right out the park. Doc will know that as a Giants fan, I'm sure. It was so satisfying, and so spot on about that. I mean, after their first how many games, it was like, be careful of Tottenham when they hit 5th gear. It's just craziness to have thought that they won the transfer window with those players.
Dodger fan. I have to clarify, Dodger fan, not Giants fan.
There you go. Important to clarify.
I do apologize sincerely. That is like saying Tottenham fan. Wow. Sorry, Doc. I apologize. I'm just going to go in a corner, put myself in detention.
No, it was genuinely that performance from Spurs and the decision making and everything that's kind of led to this point is as embarrassing as Match of the Day's coverage of the Liverpool Wolves game this evening. Which, if you haven't seen the clip going and doing the rounds, make sure you seek it out after you've listened to this podcast. It's very amusing indeed. Moving kind of forwards. there was obviously an absence in the game, which was Mohamed El Neni. He had a knock in training. We haven't got any details about that, unfortunately, yet. Mikel Arteta will, of course, face the media ahead of the game against Manchester United. That is expected to be, I believe, on Friday, to my understanding. So I'm sure he'll be asked on the latest updates on fitness. Doc, I do have some things that I am always worried to share with you, depending on the answers I'm going to get these days. But the first one is a video of Reece Nelson that he's posted to his Instagram page. I'm hoping you can see this. You can indeed. Him now running on a treadmill. He suffered, obviously, a hamstring injury in that game against Juventus. Seeing this type of movement, is this encouraging that with a hamstring injury that he obviously suffered, that he should hopefully be back on the field sometime soon?
Yeah, it's good news. Anytime. I mean, the pace there isn't that high. But we know that the stress through the hamstring when you're running can be quite high. So it's good news that he's doing that, and they'll increase that pace. They'll put him then probably start through multi-directional as well, and then we'll really see kind of how he responds. The key with these, it's hard to really say. Seeing a player do that, it's all about how they respond to some of that. So, and that obviously we're not privy until we see the next one, right? So.
Absolutely. And again, at the risk of being told what I'm looking at as last time, of course, yes, Gabriel Jesus not using crutches anymore, but he's now working with a ball as well.
There's a ball at his feet.
There's a ball at his feet. Now, Jesus is an interesting one, because I know if you've been listening to Arteta talk about Jesus recently, a lot of people are kind of reading deeply into some of those comments, because he's not talking about him in any kind of short terminology still. He's still using the word months when he talks about him. And considering months, plural, would be more March than February, has that concerned you, or are we reading too much into it at that stage?
I thought the context that he used was that we'll have him back, or hope to have him back for the final months. Right. I think that's what he said. So that's arbitrary. What does that mean? What is the final month? That's all arbitrary, right? And so, but I think when Mikel, something you even saw with the Xhaka injury, anytime there's a long-term injury, he's very vague. He never puts pressure on players to return. So I don't read too much into anything that he says when it comes to this. He's like him, Pep. I think Klopp's probably one of the best at actually being more straightforward. But Pep, Mikel, Conte's like this as well. I don't really put much into what they're saying. I look more at the progress that you're seeing objectively. And in this case, yeah, I mean, it's great. I think the key thing is that he's progressing. I think that's the key thing, is that he's continued to do more with that knee. It's hard to really say where he is. I think we're really going to know more about that when he gets back to running. He's not even running, if I'm not mistaken, like in a pool or on an Alter G treadmill, because that puts a lot of load through that knee. And then once he goes from that to more multi-directional stuff, especially side to side, that's when you're going to try to start to see more of, okay, he's getting closer to returning to at least on-pitch stuff.
Doc, just something that I seen on Twitter was a picture of him when he was initially taken out of the boot, and he was doing I think it was that 75% picture that everyone will have seen. And I don't know what the medical term for this is, but his baby leg. How common is that for, to see quite a significant deterioration of the muscle around the leg, and how quickly can that build back up?
Oh yeah, I mean it's quite common. Have you seen Tom's legs? I'm kidding.
He's fired
shots.
Firing shots. I lied earlier on. I did invite both of them over. I didn't invite you.
No, it's right. We call it, muscular atrophy, right? So, and he was in that extension brace. Extension brace meaning he wasn't allowed to really have any motion through it. So, like for example, there's research showing 2 weeks of bed rest, meaning no movement, you lose half your muscle mass. So in this case, he's not really doing anything on it. So your muscle will atrophy quite quickly. But then in his case, for an elite level athlete who's in great shape prior, it can return quite quickly as well.
Yeah, indeed. There's hope for everybody, Owen. Trust me, you'll get there.
Wow, you can lose muscle mass in 2 weeks. So
if you're on bed rest, you'll lose half your muscle mass on average.
Wow. So people who have long-term health issues and stuff like that, and they have to be in bed, like that's devastating, huh?
Absolutely. So that it starts like that vicious cycle, right?
Mm.
You lose your muscle mass. Now it's harder to move. It's more painful to move. Therefore, what you move less, and then you see really people declining over time.
Imagine lockdown had a massive impact.
Yeah, if
globally.
you're not an athlete, like how do you? Yeah, that's craziness. Like how
Yeah, it's tough.
you lose it over months, but building it back takes months, I guess.
It does. It does. And I mean, I always recommend, if you're in that position, reach out to someone who might know more than you do. So,
Right. Okay.
Yeah, indeed. Let's talk about transfers. Of course, since we last recorded a couple of weeks ago, we have missed out on Mykhailo Mudryk, and he's gone to Chelsea. I want to quickly start off. Brief question, so no need to elaborate on this one. But what did we do? Did we do anything? Did we cheat in any way that evening to take our minds off of the damning transfer news? To tell you what I did, I went to a steakhouse with some friends and ordered it was actually a US fillet steak, because it's one of those places where you go, where you look at the menu, like, this is ridiculously expensive, right? Stupidly expensive. And I was like, if I'm here, I'm gonna go for it. I might as well. So I did, and it was, I've never spent more on a steak before, but it was gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous. So that was my cheat to take my mind off Mudryk. Raj, did you have any scooping of ice cream? I know you're a big fan.
No, it's funny. I was actually kind of happy that we didn't go.
Really?
I was happy that we didn't go away from our approach that's gotten us here. I know we're going to touch on Eddie and them in a little bit, but to me, discipline, process, and approach is what has underpinned the transformation of the club. And this was a continuation of that. And so to me, and you really see that when the stress is on. So obviously we know we need reinforcements. We know there's a rival club coming in, but we still stuck to our guns. We still held firm. So I was actually, once I kind of heard about what happened in that process, to me, it was actually kind of reassuring that our club continues to be on the up and up.
Soph.
I just switched Twitter off after going back and forth, trying to make sense with Arsenal fans, and just literally my argument was, you wanted Vlahovic, we got Jesus. You wanted Lisandro Martinez, we got Zinchenko. And you can go back. There's others, and keep the faith. 8 points clear. Something's happening. So no, I did not binge at all. In fact, I had a healthy spinach salad with edamame, peas, tomatoes, cucumber, and a little feta cheese, Doc, just sprinkled on top.
There you go. Owen, did you I know obviously we were in the TGT chat, and I certainly kind of walked away from conversations around it, because I was just done with it at that stage. I needed investing so much time into one story, and for it to do that was it was painful.
Yeah, man. The first thing I'm gonna say is that I can't cheat because I don't really keep any rules on myself. I'll be very, very honest. Okay,
every day is a cheat day.
I'm afraid.
You're talking about food. I just want to make sure you're talking about food.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, can she? Yeah. I'm a free soul. I can't be pinned down. Look, the reason I'm doing this competition is because I'm competitive. I'm not really the way my process normally works by punishing yourself through fitness to make yourself realize how out of shape you are, and then you want to make changes for performance reasons rather than health reasons. That's the way I work. It's just my process. Okay, it takes a while. But in regards to the Mykhailo Mudryk thing, look, I was disappointed. I wasn't disappointed with Edu. I wasn't disappointed with Mikel Arteta or the ownership. I was disappointed for the amount of time that was put in to try and attain this player, and it's simply being hijacked by a mercenary who's, in my opinion, completely destroying the game, destroying the market. Where does this go? How does the market recover from acquisitions like this, like Anthony, like Cucurella? You're looking at players like, I remember Fernando Torres moving to Chelsea, and I get there's inflation with time, but this is a guy who's made 30 senior appearances, and he's moving for £100 million. I sort of mentioned days before the podcast, I was pretty disappointed with Mykhailo Mudryk myself. Initially, I thought, how do you twerk for a side so publicly, and then seemingly just completely beeline within a matter of hours, and walk away from your so-called dream move. But listen, none of us know the circumstances that move happened under. None of us know the pressures on that guy personally. So I suppose you can't really hold it easy. He's a young kid too, you know what I mean? So when the carrot's being dangled in front of you by someone like Todd Bowley, sometimes it's difficult to walk away from it. The only thing I would say is that whilst I have a lot of trust in Edu and Arteta and complete faith in them, and I absolutely love them both, is that they've got their work cut out now, because at this stage, it isn't about, it's not completely about, I should say, it fitting the process or fitting the profile of player that we commonly want to approach. At this time, it's about getting bodies through the door, because when European football returns, when some of these other big games return, when injuries are picked up, the position that we have put ourselves in isn't to be snuffed at. You know, to me, it would be a complete waste of an opportunity not to at least get some bodies through the door.
No, it would. It would be a waste. And I think, you know,
happiness has a lot
go on,
to.
Soph.
Sorry, Tom. I also like how we answered your question to say quickly, really not quickly.
Yeah,
but real quick. We were talking about how long has it been since we've seen Arsenal players not happy to play for the club, and now you see this happiness. Is he going to be happy at Chelsea? That will affect how he plays. If you're not happy in your job, we've all been there as well. It works both ways, no matter what industry you're in. So it'd be interesting to see how he is when he actually plays. Maybe he's just one of those guys that can switch all the emotions off and play. I don't know.
Yeah, how he, you know, I don't think I've ever been invested more in a player failing. I really do want to see Madrid.
Well, you did a phenomenal
fail.
special, which I know Chelsea fans have reaped the benefits of as well.
Yeah, indeed. I think I mentioned that. So someone commented on that saying Mudryk is blue, and I was like, Mudryk is 10th. You know, that's where Mudryk is.
See, sometimes I think this is where the sport gets sanitized. Sometimes, and look, we all come over and cast our opinions, and some people, to a certain extent, want to have a sort of safety blanket that they don't really want to put their opinion out there. I'll say this off the bat, I went from loving that guy to absolutely despising that guy within a minute. Okay. I'm completely petty. I'm completely just territorial with Arsenal. And I hope that Ben White kicks that kid through the advertising boards at the Emirates and Stamford Bridge the next time we play them. And that's fine. That's okay. That's what competition's all about. That's what the tribalism of football is all about, isn't it? But it's just, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of reception, because we all know that Twitter itself isn't really representative of the everyday match going fan, and that the feeling around the stadium can be completely different to that online. It'll be interesting to see what type of reaction he gets personally the next time he has an interaction with our fan base.
Well, Chelsea will arrive at the Emirates between now and the end of the season. So, and I imagine he'll play, you know, so he is going to get a reception. I imagine the one I'd find similar is probably when Higuain arrived with Napoli for the Emirates Cup game, was roundly booed because, of course, the saga that we had associated with him. I don't think it was wildly his fault that he didn't move. It was in the end Arsenal's, but still, just off the back of that, there was reaction. So, yeah, let's talk about Edu as kind of the last topic before Doc takes a couple of questions. Raj, in terms of Edu, he has faced backlash. You know, I do a show every single day, and I did a phone-in show on the day after that Mudryk left Shakhtar for Chelsea, and I think the main frustration for people is the amount of time we invested into that saga and ended up obviously with nothing, which I can understand. I understand why we invested time, because I think we genuinely believed we were going to be getting hold of him from the way that he was acting. You know, certainly seemed that he wanted to move to Arsenal. And the other frustration is obviously that it doesn't seem like we're immediately after an alternative and that there's not a clear backup plan right now. So where do you stand on the managing of this situation by Edu and the club?
Well, I think in general, you know, the process that you've seen with Edu is it's pretty methodical when it comes to the negotiation process. They go through multiple stages. And Owen said this earlier, you can't do anything when someone else comes in like that at the last second and pretty much piggybacks off all the hard work that you've done negotiating, right? Like, I've been in that position negotiating at a high level, and that's extremely frustrating because you're the one who put the work in. And now someone just comes in, yeah, we'll give you everything you want, right? And we'll give you 8.5 years at whatever his salary is, right? And like, what do? There's nothing you can do about that. And so then it becomes really frustrating in that end. But then something that was, we mentioned before is that they've shown to have this ability to move on to other players, like, with the Zinchenko after Lissandro went to United, like that being a prime example. And I think the winter window in general is very, very difficult. We know this historically. And so it's hard to find reasonable deals right now, regardless. And so, it takes two to make a deal. It's not just Arsenal going out there and saying, "Hey, can we have this guy?" Right? They want the right profile, but the other side also has to be amenable to making a fair deal as well. And I think, part of the process here has not been getting ourselves into some of these, silly deals, Kim Kallstrom, stuff like that, where you just want someone to come in and nothing ever, and so I think they're very, very cognizant and weary of that. That being said, like Owen said, at this point, they have to be very, very aggressive because, this opportunity doesn't come all the time to be 8 points clear, and, potentially more after the weekend. We'll see, but right, it's an opportunity that you have to take, and this is going to be the easiest year to win the title. Not easiest because we're not in Champions League, right? You're only fighting really on two fronts right now, mainly. So I think you can put a lot more resources into the title chase compared to future years.
Yeah, it's hopeful. I think that people will start to see the bigger picture once maybe the anger is settled. And I know that we're recording this, days after this has happened. And I think for a lot of people, maybe the anger of that situation has enabled them to open their eyes a bit more to the bigger picture. But it's undeniable to me the progress we've made with Edu as now sporting director from technical director that he was before. It's not been perfect, Soph. Mistakes have been made. You think back to last January, I think there's a lot of PTSD from that window, which obviously bleeds into the worries around this window. But where we sit in the table right now is surely evidence that there has been good work that doesn't deserve for, after missing out on one player, for calls to him to leave the club.
I don't know if you can hear the sirens in the background, but they're not coming for Edu, that's for sure. I think that if we had signed a player in January, I'm not sure there would be as much chaos and noise. And here we are, once again, focused solely on one player. And so I get some of the frustration. However, to suggest that Edu's failing, he's the reason why, together with Mikel, we're in the position we're in, right? He came into the club as an invincible in his new position. And one of the first things that he identified was, what is this apathy and complacency? Everyone around here just acting like, well, we're the, players in particular, they're playing for Arsenal, but they don't care. And he really resented that. And he wanted to change that culture. And he's said very clearly many times, finishing fourth consecutively is not good enough for this team. He also did an interview on Sky Sports, I think it's about 15, 16 months ago now, where he projected the concept and the project of youth and then building on that youth with world-class players. Well, I know that Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus are young guys, but having played for Manchester City and competed at the highest level in the Premier League and in Europe, they can be considered world-class players, right? They have changed the attitude, the mentality of this team. If you heard Ben White's interview the other day, Jan Fjortog did an interview with Martin in Norwegian, and he said, if someone's not doing what they're supposed to, they will be notified. They've built a culture, and Arsenal 2.0 is in full effect. And nothing gave me more pleasure than defending them on anything I did outside of our show over the last 2 days, because being held to ransom is not Arsenal's way. And if you look at the signings that we've made since the Ramsdale, Tomiyasu, Benjamin White window, I think we've done pretty well. Now, would it be remiss of us not to capitalize on this window to kind of close the deal? 100%. I hope not. I hope we do the right thing, because I can't deal personally with what would come after that.
Mm.
But I know, like, I don't know, Tom, if you've from the reports that was the guy and they don't have backup ideas. I don't know. That wasn't Football London. I read that somewhere. That wasn't you,
No,
was
it
it?
wasn't us. It's certainly been reported. I think David Ornstein mentioned something on the lines of there wasn't like an immediate plan for who would be the guy, after both Joao Felix and because they wanted both, they were the two players they were looking at as
Mhm.
opportunities in this window, and both of them have gone for figures that they just didn't deem viable, and for structures, because it was a similar figure, but it was the structure of the deal with Mudryk that they weren't willing to commit to. And I, in my mind, I am a little bit surprised that perhaps that's such kind of common knowledge in a way that to claim that there's not an immediate. It makes a bit of sense because obviously if you've got such a clear target, who would be the alternative. It depends on the time. It depends on the frame of the window, who's available at the time as well. Because if we're being honest, yes, we in an ideal world we want a plan A, B, C, D, E, or whatever. In an ideal world we want that. But the plan A is always going to be the ultimate goal of the club. And depending on what window you're in, what clubs are selling, what clubs aren't selling, and especially during the January window, it's very difficult, to sign players. And Chelsea have now inflated the market to a point where the other name that we're talking about, which is Moussa Diaby, by Leverkusen, have supposedly said that they want 100 million because that's what Mudryk went for.
This is what they've done. This is the problem, like them. And you know what? I'm glad that, look, I'm not going to sit here and lie. Mudryk would have been phenomenal in our team.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, at some point, you have to say no. And, Doc will know Todd Bowley here doesn't have a super great reputation, and he owns a few entertainment outlets and, companies and stuff like that. People don't generally like doing business with him. And I would rather, and Arsenal fans, come at me. I don't care what you say. I think right now in the Premier League, the Arsenal Football Club have the most responsible owners. And me, who wanted Arteta maybe to lose his job after the 8th, losing to Emery, 0-0 after first 3 games, I put my hands up and I say, you know what? Thank God we had owners that didn't pull the trigger and that believed in his vision. Because now look where we're at. And so I personally think that the Cronkies right now, and look at the unrest at, Liverpool, not the owners wanting to sell Manchester United right now. Look what's happened to Chelsea. Look at Everton. That's a perfect Arsenal example, isn't it, in terms of what they wanted? So, for me, I think I'm happy with where we're at, and I eat my words, and I'm happy to do so because you know why? All I want is for my club to be successful, and I've never been happier to be wrong.
Absolutely. Owen, final words on this Edu fiasco.
Yeah, well, look, I think to put Edu under the microscope of missed targets, and then complain about having players like Nicola Pepe, like Sia Kolasinac, players like this that were on the books. And I think the thing is as well is you can talk about the transfer fee for Mykhailo Mudryk all you want and the structure. Or the big thing for me, I think, when I look at that is the wage demands. One of the things that we heard was that it was in around 30, 40, maybe 50 grand a week that Mykhailo Mudryk was going to be getting. Chelsea have seemingly doubled that or even more, if you believe it, whichever report you believe. But for me, the thing is, when you take players in, when you acquire these players, you never hear of, oh, the club are looking to recoup the exact amount to spend. No, they're having difficulty moving him on because he's an underperforming player on a high wage and nobody wants to take on those wages. So that's really good for me, is that it doesn't matter if it's going to be the unpopular thing. They aren't doing it just to please a fan base. It has to work into the plans. But I think in regards to what you were talking around the owners, not pulling the triggers and stuff like that, I really think that we need to stop referring to the Cronkies in plural. To me, there's that old saying, you don't judge a son by the sins of his father. And I think that applies most here because it's almost as if we've had two owners under the same banner. For me, Josh Kroenke is a completely different person with completely different morals and a completely different way of operating. And I think it's so transparent to see that there. You know, you watch the Amazon documentary, and whilst yes, it is a propaganda piece and it can be paraded however the club want it to be paraded, I think it's genuine how much he cares about the club, how much now you can question what his motivations are, whether that's financial or silverware, whatever it is, but I think the truth is that he probably does have the club's best interest at heart. And not only does he have the club's best interest at heart, I think he holds a sense of loyalty to both Mikel Arteta and Edu, because he's got a personal relationship with those guys. You know, he's in around a similar sort of age. And he seems to really be instilling himself in that sort of day-to-day life at Arsenal more than I ever thought he would. So, look, I'm extremely happy with the people, like Sophie said, can fire shots all they want with Vinay, who I thought there was a bit of a strange choice to put him in the position that he was in, given his qualifications and his background. It was a bit of a strange one for me. But he seemingly left the footballing stuff to Mikel Arteta and Edu, which smart people get themselves out of the way of other smart people. You know, when it's their field, let them handle it. So with the team in the background, I'm completely happy with every single one of them, Edu included. I think he's doing a fantastic job, and I think anybody that is holding him up for scrutiny over one deal is obviously overlooking the fantastic work that we've done with this squad, because if it wasn't for Edu, we wouldn't be in the position we're in now.
Yeah, absolutely. Rosh.
Yeah, one comment on KSC. So I agree with, Josh being the face of KSC for Arsenal, but I wrote an article on KSC, I think 18 months ago for Squawka. If you look at how they've handled all their franchises, they have 3 in the US: Avalanche, Nuggets, Rams, and Arsenal. They set the template.
You missed the Rapids.
The little cross side.
Yeah, correct. You're right. And the Rapids, exactly. So in each of those examples, once they found a coach and management they trusted, Sean McVay, with Mike Malone, I cannot remember the Avalanche coach, but they won their Stanley Cup with that. They invested in each of them, and that transferred over now with Mikel as well. So I think Josh is the face, but for Arsenal, but their strategy, if you analyze it, has been the same throughout all of their franchises.
Jared Bednar is the Avalanche coach. So there you go. For those that were screaming it at the
and they could win another championship this year with the Nuggets, Doc. They're good.
They're loaded. I mean, all those teams are loaded, especially the Avalanche. I mean, the Avalanche rebuild most mirrors Arsenal. They went heavy
incredible
project, and they have so much talent there.
There's always going to be residual hate at Arsenal for the Kroenkes because of the way in which from 2007 to 2018 when they were majority shareholders, and I know that for some people it's very difficult for them to accept that they didn't want to invest in something that they weren't wholly owners of. And at the time, I know that I was angry at that, and I was frustrated with that period as well. I do remember an article back in 2007 though, by The Guardian that did say that Arsene Wenger basically, and I think it was Hill Wood also turned down an offer from KSE to invest during 2007. And from that point forward, so there was always question marks for me around whether or not actually it was the owners or whether or not it was the people that were really involved in running the club, that they were just turning down the offers that were coming in because they wanted to do it their way. So I think there's a little bit of a grey area in that. But what we do know now is obviously since 2018, and they have taken full control, we have been backed. There is investment, but there is still structure and there is still principles about how the way we want to go about doing it. And I think that's what's got us to where we are. If you want to be Chelsea and, sponge 500 million, but sit in 10th, be my guest, but I'm very, very happy and I'm glad that I can see things. Again, I will plug it. If you haven't seen Tim Cahill's discussion with Roy Keane 3 years ago, in which he sees everything ahead of time, go and watch it. It's unbelievable foresight and it's really worth a listen because A, it embarrasses Roy Keane, which is always a worthy watch, and 2, because of Tim working with Arteta in the past, he knew what was coming and it's all come to light as well. We'll finish the show, Sophie, with your question for the doc, which I know you've been saving as well, and that'll wrap us up.
So I have a question for the doc and then I have a tip for the Gooner universe. Firstly, Doc, after an intense game like Tottenham, North London derby, playing away from home, the next game, Manchester United, I know there's the usual kind of they go to training, they replenish, repeat, they keep going. What's your take on what you saw? Like, I know players will be gassed. They put everything into that game. So, from a physical point of view, what do you think's happening this week?
I mean, the first thing you have to do, the first thing is going to be data-based, right? So you know which players going into it from the sports science staff might be a little more fatigued than others. And that might have also played a part in some of the subs as well. And so that's the first way you manage some of that load. And then you're going right away into recovery as well. And then once they're normalized, and that's not just from the data, it's talking to the physios because they have this huge sample size with players now, right? They're able to kind of understand, who responds better, who might not be telling the full truth, who might be, who's more open and honest with stuff. So that's a big gray area, and that relationship is important. So first thing you want to do is go straight into that recovery mode, nutrition, sleep, and then, you start to dip back to that baseline level of training as well. And so it's really about just, a lot of this is just rhythm and process. And I think, and that's another key thing we've seen with this Arsenal team under Mikel Edu, is that they've really built the fitness of this team. And Mikel said it when he first started. He said, it's going to take, he's like, when I got here, the fitness was appalling. And I remember this past summer, he said, he's finally now happy with the fitness levels. And that's how long it takes. It takes 18 months, 24 months to really get player to the level that he wants to play with. Because we play with a lot of high intensity burst with the press, and kind of the way that we play, right? Those quick movements. And so that's going to really, really help in maintaining fitness levels. And then, of course, I think a key thing with this team is starting to see guys like Thomas Partey finally get over some of his injury struggles and become that physical monster that we saw, right, in La Liga, which of course helps a lot. Knock on wood, everyone, but hopefully that continues. But yeah, the key thing is, I think, is just recovery first, and then you assess, and then you're going to train and manage some of that training load heading into that United game.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had a tip, Soph?
Yeah, I didn't know if Owen wanted to ask his question first before I give my tip. So
I think he's
okay.
clear
So
this week.
okay, clear. So I don't know what the doc thinks of this in terms of heart rate and stuff, but he will slap me on the wrist. However, I got through the North London derby, and I found I've done this before, and with the Man United game and the City games coming that we have, I've got these rubber bands. So I've been pacing up and down in the living room, and I thought, hold on a second, let me get my rubber bands. So I put my rubber bands on my ankles, and I'm like going left and right, and then I'm getting my rubber band here. And it really helped me get through that game. And at the same time, I was also exercising. And with the doc's blessing, I'm telling you, Gooners, it worked. And I killed two birds with one stone. And I wasn't drinking alcohol during the game.
Well, there you go. Lovely stuff.
I mean, that's a drop. That's a drop the exercise mic moment.
Yeah, great. I mean, that's something we call something I'll recommend to people who are like, let's say, usually just like during cardio, just put something on that you want to watch while you're doing it, right? Watch a half of Arsenal. You're through 45 minutes of cardio and you won't even notice the minutes go by, right? And so, although, I mean, maybe you don't want your heart rate that high while you're doing it, but
I do want to give a plug to the Strava group as well before we wrap up. www.strava.com/clubs/ESARP. I have been getting back underway with my daily jogs, trying to do a mile a day as much as I can. Some days it's been silly cold. Yesterday when I was running home, it hailed. It was so painful trying to run in the hail, but I did manage to finish it. And I've done a fair few this week. To give a shout out to the group, we've now got, I think, over 70 athletes, 77 members in the Strava group, which is great. So if you haven't already joined up, I can tell you that this last week, James Neal did the most time in Strava, 13 hours worth of activities. Fantastic stuff. Hemming was the highest number of activities with 14 in 7 days. So he's doing 2 exercises a day, which is great. And Scott Newell did the longest distance, I assume, cycling with 179.4 kilometers in last week. So there is a leaderboard in that club, which you can get involved in. We've had members meet one another for Arsenal matches. It's an amazing community that's gradually building. So as I said, www.strava.com/clubs/ESARP. That's Eat, Sleep, Arsenal, Repeat podcast. So there you go. Raj, thank you so much for your time, my friends. Much appreciated. Tell people where they can find you.
Find me at 3CB Performance on pretty much all social media channels. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the time, as always.
Pleasure. Soph, always a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Can't wait to see you in London town. And if I could just plug one thing we did on the show this week, as an Arsenal fan, if you missed our Vic Akers show, please listen to it. He's a legend of the club. He's actually the most successful Arsenal manager of all time and changed the women's game. A revolutionary, worked with George Graham and Wenger, gave us some good nuggets and stories. And if you can swing by and check that out, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
There you go. You can find that at the Highbury Squad. So make sure that you are indeed looking over there for all Sophie's content. And lastly, Owen, thank you so much for your time again. I look forward to seeing your fine self next week.
Yeah, exactly. You can find me at the Tollington probably at about 9 o'clock in the morning, knowing Mike. No, looking forward to getting over everybody and it'll be good to see you in person again.
Absolutely. Raj, I wish you hopefully in the future to be able to come and see us. I do. But until then, thank you everybody for listening, of course. Do drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. You can find myself at Tom Cantor Media, at the Gooner Talk TV on Twitter. And of course, all that lovely stuff as usual. I would have given you an announcement about something that you needed to spot in the stream at 8 a.m., which would have been earlier on today. So make sure you look out for that and give us some feedback on that. But other than that, it's been a genuine pleasure, as it always is, to join you. And I'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.